I took my daughter-in-law's broken phone in for repair, but the technician who fixed it pulled me aside and whispered, "Cancel your cards, change your passwords, and run immediately." When I asked him what was going on, he turned the phone toward me, and what he showed me made my blood run cold. But before I continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you're watching this video from. We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. My name is Linda. I'm 65 years old, and up until 3 days ago, I believed I had a perfectly normal life. I live in a comfortable house in a suburb of Denver, Colorado, with my husband, Robert, who is 67. We both retired recently. I was a history teacher, and he was an engineer. We have only one son, Michael, who has been married for 5 years to Sarah. Our daughter-in-law always seemed like a charming young woman to me. She has a degree in business administration, is intelligent, beautiful, and worked at a financial consulting firm. Michael met her at a mutual friend's party, and they got married in less than a year. Sometimes I thought she was a bit distant, but I attributed it to work stress and her more reserved personality. It all started last Wednesday when Sarah came to visit us alone, which was unusual, as she and Michael typically came together on weekends. She arrived agitated, saying she had a problem with her phone. The screen was completely shattered, and she asked if I knew a reliable place to get it fixed. I broke the phone by accident, and I need it working today for an important meeting tomorrow. Michael is out of town, and I have no idea where to take it, she explained. Coincidentally, I had taken my phone for repair the week before to a small shop downtown. The owner, Jay, was the son of a former colleague from the school where I taught. I offered to take her device to him. "That would be perfect, Linda. You're a lifesaver," Sarah said, handing me the phone. "The passcode is 022818, our wedding anniversary. I have to run to the office now. Can I pick it up tonight?" I agreed. Of course. I took the phone and drove to Jay's shop. The place was small, wedged between a CVS pharmacy and a bakery, with a discreet sign that read, "Express Tech Repair." When I walked in, Jay was hunched over a workbench full of tiny tools and disassembled electronics. "Mrs. Davis, so good to see you again," he greeted me with a smile. I explained the situation with my daughter-in-law's phone, and he assured me he could fix it in a few hours. "Come back after lunch," I said, handing him the device and the passcode. I spent the afternoon running errands, and around 4 p.m., I returned to the shop. Jay was alone, and when he saw me enter, his face changed. The friendly expression gave way to something I couldn't decipher in the moment. Concern, fear. "Mrs. Davis," he said in a low voice, glancing quickly toward the door as if verifying there was no one else there. "The phone is ready, but I need to show you something, ma'am." I frowned, confused. "Is there a problem with the device?" "No, not with the device," he replied, and then he leaned in, speaking almost in a whisper. "Cancel your cards, change your passwords, and run immediately." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What? What are you talking about, Jay?" He signaled for me to come closer, unlocked Sarah's phone, and opened the messaging app. He navigated to a folder named Plan B and showed me the screen. My blood froze. They were messages exchanged between Sarah and my son, detailing a plan to kill me. "Mom is getting more forgetful," a message from Michael read. "It's the perfect time. The doctor is already documenting her memory lapses at my request. No one is going to question it when it happens." Sarah's reply churned my stomach. "The life insurance policy for her and your dad is worth nearly $2 million. With the sale of the house afterward, we'll have enough to start fresh far away from Denver." I felt my legs give way and had to lean on the counter. This can't be true," I murmured, more to myself than to Jay. "Mrs. Davis, I swear I didn't mean to pry. When I was testing the phone after the repair, a notification popped up, and I accidentally saw these messages. I couldn't ignore it. I kept scrolling through the conversation, my eyes wide with horror. They discussed methods, dates, and how to make it look like a domestic accident. They talked about medications they could use, doses that would be fatal for a woman of my age with high blood pressure. My own son and his wife, coldly planning my death. "They're planning to kill Robert too," I whispered, feeling like I couldn't breathe. The conversation detailed how they would eliminate my husband afterward. "It has to be a few weeks apart," Michael wrote. "An older couple dying at the same time would raise suspicions." Jay locked the shop door and flipped the sign to closed. He brought me a glass of water and helped me sit down. "You have to go to the police," he said with a firm but gentle voice. I shook my head, still in shock. "They won't believe me. It's the word of a forgetful old woman against my son and daughter-in-law, respectable people in the community." "Then, ma'am, you have to gather proof, and you have to protect yourself." He was right. I took the phone with trembling hands and started taking photos of the messages with my own device. I documented everything: dates, times, the detailed plan, the mentions of the family doctor who was apparently being manipulated to create a history of dementia. "Jay, can you restore the phone exactly as it was? I don't want them to know we discovered anything." He agreed, and we worked together for another hour. When he finished, Sarah's phone looked untouched, with no sign that her secret messages had been discovered. Leaving the shop, I felt like I was in a nightmare. The gray sky of Denver seemed even gloomier. How would I go home? How would I look at Robert knowing our only son planned to kill us? Even worse, how would I face Sarah when she came to pick up the phone? Driving back home, I planned every step. First, I had to alert Robert without scaring him too much. Then we had to act fast, but intelligently. If Michael and Sarah suspected we knew something, they might accelerate their plans or create a new strategy. The weight of the betrayal was almost unbearable. My son, whom I carried in my womb, whom I nursed, whom I helped with homework, whom I consoled when his first relationship ended, was planning my death for money. I parked the car in front of our house and took several deep breaths. I had to stay calm. The game of life or death had begun, and I had to be smarter than the two young people who thought a forgetful old lady would be easy prey. Little did they know that this lady had protested for civil rights when she was a student, had raised a child alone while her husband traveled for work on oil rigs, and had survived breast cancer 5 years ago. If they thought I was going down without a fight, they were very wrong. I got out of the car, holding Sarah's phone as if it were a bomb about to explode. I entered the house where my life would never be the same again. Robert was in the living room watching the news, as he did every afternoon. His familiar face, with gray hair and reading glasses perched on the tip of his nose, gave me a moment of normality amidst the chaos that had installed itself in my life. "Did you get Sarah's phone sorted out?" he asked absent-mindedly, not taking his eyes off the TV. I swallowed hard. "Yes, it's fixed." I had to tell him, but I didn't know how to start. How do you tell your husband of 40 years that your only son wants you both dead? "Robert," I called out. My voice was firmer than I expected. "I need to show you something. It's serious." Something in my tone must have alarmed him because he immediately turned off the TV and looked at me attentively. "What happened, Linda?" I sat beside him and showed him the photos I had taken of the messages. I watched his face as he read the initial confusion, followed by disbelief, then horror, and finally, a pain so deep I thought he would collapse right there. "No," he whispered, his voice choked. "There must be some mistake. Michael, never." "I didn't want to believe it either," I replied, holding his trembling hands. "But it's them, Robert. It's Michael's number. It's the way he writes." And Sarah, responding from her phone, which is right here with me. Robert closed his eyes, breathing deeply several times. When he opened them again, I saw something I rarely witnessed: absolute determination. "What are we going to do?" he asked. I explained my initial plan. Document everything. Check our bank accounts, change passwords, cancel shared cards, and investigate which doctor was involved in this. We had to act as if nothing had changed, while secretly gathering enough evidence to confront them or, if necessary, take it all to the police. "Sarah is coming to pick up the phone tonight," I warned. "We have to act normal." "How?" Robert's voice cracked. "How am I going to look at her knowing that?" "The same way you taught teenagers to fake interest in medieval history for 30 years, I tried to joke, but the smile came out weak. "One step at a time, Robert. Our lives depend on this." We spent the next hour checking bank accounts online. We discovered something disturbing. Small sums had been transferred regularly from our joint account to an unknown account over the last 3 months. Amounts low enough not to raise suspicion: $50 here, $100 there, but totaling nearly $5,000. "Michael has access to our accounts," Robert murmured. "We gave him power of attorney last year, remember? In case something happened to us." The irony was bitter. We trusted him so much that we practically handed him the tools for our own destruction. We changed all the passwords, canceled 2 credit cards that Michael had as an authorized user, and called the bank requesting a block on any transaction over $1,000 without in-person authorization. "And what about the doctor?" asked Robert. Dr. Evans had been treating us for over 15 years. He was a friend. He occasionally had lunch at our house. The idea that he might be falsifying medical reports at my son's request was almost as painful as Michael's betrayal. "I'm going to schedule an appointment tomorrow," I decided. "I want to see what he says about my memory." At 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. Robert and I looked at each other, tense. He squeezed my hand, a silent promise that we would stick to our plan. I opened the door, forcing a smile. Sarah looked beautiful as always, with her brown hair impeccably styled and elegant clothes. That polished appearance now seemed like a perfect mask to hide the monstrosity beneath. "Linda, sorry for coming so late. How did it go with the technician?" "Everything went well," I replied, handing her the phone. "Jay did a great job. The screen is like new." She turned on the device, checked quickly, and smiled. "Perfect. How much was it?" "Let me pay you back." "Don't worry. I already took care of it. It was a courtesy from him. He didn't even charge because I'm a longtime customer." Sarah hesitated for a moment, a slight furrow of her brows that I wouldn't have noticed before. Was she worried the technician had seen something? "Are you sure?" I didn't want to impose. "Nonsense, dear. Do you want to come in? Robert is watching TV. We were going to have some tea." "Oh, I can't today. I have a presentation tomorrow morning, and I still need to review some data." I noticed how she avoided looking directly at me while speaking. A skilled liar, but now that I knew what to look for, the small signs were there. "I understand. When does Michael get back from his trip?" "Tomorrow night," she replied quickly. Another lie. According to the messages, Michael wasn't traveling. He was at home waiting for news from her. "Tell him to visit us soon," I said, keeping the tone casual. "We haven't seen him in almost 2 weeks." "Of course." She smiled, putting the phone in her purse. "He misses you guys too." "Oh, I remembered. Did you check out that doctor Michael recommended, the memory specialist?" My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. "We haven't had time yet." "Why?" Is that hesitation on her face a mask of feigned concern? "Michael mentioned that lately you've been forgetting some important things. Names, appointments, just his impression." I responded with a light laugh. "My memory is excellent. I even remember the day you wore that same outfit to my cousin Elisa's birthday party 2 months ago." I saw something flash quickly through her eyes. Frustration? Worry? Before her social smile returned. "Well, anyway, it never hurts to get a checkup, right? At your age." Sure. "I'll schedule an appointment soon." We said goodbye, and as soon as I closed the door, I leaned against it, exhausted by the effort of feigning normality. Robert was waiting for me in the living room, tense. "Well?" "She tried to plant the idea of my memory loss," I replied, sitting next to him. "They are setting the stage for when it happens." "What do we do now?" "Act," I replied, a determination growing inside me. "Tomorrow morning I'm going to see Dr. Evans. Then I want to check our life insurance. We need to know exactly what Michael altered. And then we are going to set our own trap." That night I could barely sleep. Every noise in the house seemed like a threat. I got up 3 times to check if the doors were locked. One of those times, I found Robert in the kitchen drinking water with the same tormented look I must have had. "I'm thinking about Michael as a child," he said softly. "Remember how he was afraid of the dark? How he ran to our bed during storms? What happened to that boy, Linda?" I had no answer. How our loving son had transformed into this calculating stranger capable of coldly planning our death. "We're going to find out," I promised, hugging him, "and we are going to survive this." The next morning, I called Dr. Evans' office claiming an emergency. I managed to get an appointment for 10 a.m. Before leaving, we checked all our accounts online again and discovered something even more disturbing. There was a new life insurance policy in my name taken out 3 months ago, which I had no knowledge of. "How is this possible?" I asked, horrified. Robert navigated through the digitized documents. "Look, the signature is yours." I leaned closer to the screen, incredulous. The signature really looked like mine, but I had never signed that document. "They forged my signature," I muttered. "And there's more. Look at the value, $1.5 million. And the sole beneficiary is Michael, Robert completed, his voice cracking. The reality of the situation finally hit me with full force. It wasn't just a vague plan. They had already taken concrete steps. Documents were forged, money was being siphoned, a doctor was possibly involved, and now a life insurance policy I knew nothing about was ready to be collected after my accidental death. I left the house feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. The appointment with Dr. Evans would be crucial. I needed to discover how far he was involved in this conspiracy. The office was quiet at that time of morning. The receptionist, who had known me for years, smiled when she saw me. "Mrs. Davis, so good to see you. The doctor will see you shortly." Less than 10 minutes later, I was called back. Dr. Evans, a middle-aged man with gray hair and a generally friendly expression, seemed slightly uncomfortable when I entered. "Linda, what a surprise. Michael called me yesterday. He said you were reluctant to get tested." I kept my expression neutral as I sat down. "Really? How strange that he would say that. Actually, doctor, I came because I am worried about my memory." The doctor nodded, as if confirming something he already knew. "Yes. Michael mentioned some concerning episodes. Forgetfulness. Confusion. Curious," I replied calmly, "because I don't recall having any problems like that." Dr. Evans hesitated for a moment. "Well, Linda, sometimes the patient doesn't perceive their own lapses. It's common in early stages of dementia. And you already have a diagnosis, apparently." He seemed increasingly uncomfortable. "No, clearly not. But Michael showed me some videos, you confusing dates, forgetting names of close people." "Videos?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "Can I see them?" He didn't leave me copies. "But, Dr. Evans," I interrupted, leaning forward, "I have been your patient for 15 years. You know me. Do you really believe I have dementia, or are you just believing what my son says?" The silence that followed was revealing. Finally, he sighed. "Linda, Michael came to see me several times in the last few months, very worried. He said you and Robert were losing the ability to care for yourselves, that you needed supervision. He asked me to document any sign of cognitive decline. And you agreed?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "I only noted what he reported. I didn't diagnose anything without exams." I stared at him, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "Dr. Evans, my son is planning to kill me and Robert." The shock on his face seemed genuine. "What, Linda? That is a very serious accusation. I have proof. And now I understand why he needed your involvement, however indirect. A medical history documenting cognitive decline would make my death much less suspicious." Dr. Evans paled visibly. His hands, usually steady, shook slightly as he adjusted his glasses. "Linda, I would never, ever participate in something like that. I thought Michael was genuinely worried about you." I took my phone out of my purse and showed him some of the photos I had taken of the messages. As he read, his face went from disbelief to horror. "My God," he murmured finally. "I had no idea." "I want to see my medical record," I demanded. "Now." He hesitated only a moment before accessing his computer and opening my file. He turned the screen so I could read. There, it was documented in impersonal clinical language. "Patient presents signs of cognitive decline as reported by son. Recurrent episodes of confusion, temporal and spatial disorientation, forgetting names and recent events. Complete neurological evaluation recommended." "This is a lie," I said with a firm voice. "And you know it. Linda, I only recorded what Michael reported. I didn't confirm or diagnose anything. But you created a record that could be used against me. An official medical record suggesting I am losing my mental faculties. Perfect for when I died accidentally, don't you think?" The doctor looked truly disturbed. "What do you want me to do?" "First, print this history for me with your signature. Then I want you to make a new entry dated today, stating that you evaluated me personally and found no sign of cognitive impairment." He agreed immediately, clearly affected by the situation. "And doctor," I added as he typed, "if something happens to Robert or me, this record and our conversation today will be the first things the police see." I left the office with the documents in hand, concrete proof of the conspiracy against us. Dr. Evans had been manipulated by Michael, but his complicity, even if out of naivety, almost cost us our lives. I drove to the bank next. I needed to personally verify our accounts and, mainly, revoke any power of attorney we had given Michael. The manager, Mr. Henderson, who had handled our accounts for years, was visibly surprised when I asked to revoke the POA. "Mrs. Davis, are you sure? Your son approached me recently saying that you wanted to expand his powers to handle finances since Mr. Davis isn't doing well health-wise." Another lie. Robert was perfectly healthy for a 67-year-old. "My husband is doing very well, Mr. Henderson. And yes, I am absolutely sure. In fact, I want to verify all account movements in the last 6 months." We spent the next hour reviewing statements. Besides the small transfers we had already identified online, we discovered something even more disturbing. Michael had initiated the process to obtain a second credit card for Robert, claiming the original was lost. He said Mr. Davis had lost the card but didn't want to bother him with the bureaucracy, explained the manager, clearly embarrassed now. "And you issued a new card without the presence or signature of the account holder?" I asked incredulously. "Mr. Yes. Well, since he had power of attorney and already handled several financial matters for you." Mr. Henderson shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I took a deep breath, containing my rage. "Cancel that card immediately and block any future attempt at issuance without our physical presence." When I left the bank, I felt simultaneously relieved to have interrupted another aspect of the plan and terrified by the extent of the plot. Michael had meticulously prepared the ground, creating a scenario where our deaths would seem natural and he would have total control over our assets. On the way home, my phone rang. It was him. My heart raced, but I answered with the most normal voice possible. "Hi, son. Mom, is everything okay? I just got back from my trip and Sarah told me you took her phone for repair." "That was very nice of you." The naturalness with which he lied was impressive. There was no trip. "You're welcome, dear. The guy at the shop is the son of a colleague of mine. He gave us a good price." "That's great. Hey, I was thinking of stopping by tonight with Sarah. It's been a while since we had dinner together, right?" A chill ran down my spine. Why this sudden interest in visiting us? Had they noticed something? Had the doctor called Michael after my visit? "Sure," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Come over. I'll make that lasagna you like." "Perfect." "Oh, and Mom, did you go to the doctor I recommended?" "Sarah said you guys hadn't gone yet." "Actually, I went to see Dr. Evans this morning." A brief silence. "You went? And what did he tell you?" "Nothing out of the ordinary. He did some simple tests. Said I am perfectly fine for my age." Another silence. Longer this time. "Oh, well, that's good then. But maybe it would be good to get a second opinion, you know? Sometimes Dr. Evans is very conservative with diagnoses." "We'll see, son. See you tonight then?" "Yes, around 7. See you later." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. The apparently innocent conversation was loaded with threatening subtexts. Michael clearly expected Dr. Evans to have declared me with some type of cognitive impairment and was destabilized when he learned that wasn't the case. And now he wanted to have dinner with us tonight. Why? To observe my behavior? To verify if I showed any suspicion? Or something worse? I arrived home and found Robert in the living room surrounded by papers. He looked up anxiously. "How did it go? Is the doctor involved?" I explained everything. How Michael had manipulated Dr. Evans to create a false medical history, how he obtained access to our bank accounts, how he forged life insurance documents. "And he just called me," I concluded. "He and Sarah want to have dinner here tonight." Robert paled. "Do you think they suspect we discovered something?" "I'm not sure, but he was clearly disturbed when he learned I went to Dr. Evans, and the doctor found nothing wrong with me." We looked at each other, the same silent question floating between us. What could Michael and Sarah try during this dinner? "We can't eat or drink anything they bring," said Robert finally, "and one of us must always be attentive, watching what they do." I agreed. "We need to record this dinner somehow. If they say something incriminating..." Robert nodded and went to get his old digital recorder he used to record meetings when he was still working. We tested the device, verifying it still worked, and hid it under the dining room table. I spent the afternoon preparing the lasagna I promised, although the idea of sitting at the table with 2 people who planned to kill us made me physically sick. Every time I thought about the messages, about the calculating coldness with which our own son discussed our death, I felt a pain that no word could describe. How did we get to this point? I asked Robert while we set the table for dinner. Where did we go wrong with him? Robert shook his head, his eyes showing the same pain I felt. I don't know, Linda. I thought we knew our son. At 7 p.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. Robert and I exchanged a last look of confirmation. The recorder was hidden under the table. Running. Our strategy was simple. Act naturally, observe their every move, and if possible, provoke some slip-up we could document. I opened the door with a rehearsed smile. Michael and Sarah were there. He was holding a bottle of red wine, and she, a box of chocolates they knew were my favorites. "Mom!" exclaimed Michael, hugging me enthusiastically. The physical contact that used to give me comfort now gave me chills. How could he hug me knowing he planned to kill me? "Can't wait to catch up," he continued, handing me the bottle. "We brought a special wine for today." "Oh, thank you, dear," I replied, discreetly analyzing the label. It was an expensive vintage, one that would normally impress me. Now it just made me wonder if it was tampered with. Robert welcomed them in the living room, his smile as forced as mine. He offered them water, coffee, or juice, anything but the wine they brought. "Not yet, Mom," said Michael, sitting comfortably on the sofa. "Let's save the wine to go with dinner." We talked about trivialities for almost half an hour. Their work, the weather, local news. The surreal normality of the situation gave me nausea. I watched as Michael occasionally exchanged looks with Sarah. How she was attentive to my every move, how he directed apparently innocent questions about my routine, my medications, my recent difficulties. "So, Mom," he said finally, leaning forward. "How was the appointment with Dr. Evans today exactly? Did he do exams? Ask for any specific test?" I kept my expression neutral. It was a normal appointment. He didn't see anything worrying. "Strange," murmured Michael, frowning. He had told me he suspected something more serious, maybe early Alzheimer's. "Really?" I asked, raising my eyebrows in fake surprise. "When did he tell you that?" Michael realized the slip. "Oh, last week when I called him to talk about those episodes I noticed." "What episodes would those be, son?" "I don't remember having any problems." A condescending smile appeared on his face. "See? That is exactly what worries us. You don't remember? Last week you forgot the name of Mrs. Higgins, our neighbor of 20 years. Then you left the stove on for hours. None of that had happened. They were lies fabricated to build the narrative of my supposed dementia." "Curious," I replied calmly. "I spoke with Mrs. Higgins just yesterday, calling her by name, and I haven't used the stove in days. I've preferred the microwave lately." Michael's smile faltered for an instant. "Let's eat," intervened Robert, standing up. "Linda's lasagna smells wonderful." At the table, the theater continued. I served the lasagna while Robert discreetly swapped the wine glasses. We had agreed we would take the wine they brought, pretend to pour it, but actually drink from another bottle we left previously opened in the kitchen. "A toast," proposed Michael, raising his glass. "To family and health." We raised our glasses and pretended to drink. I watched attentively as Michael and Sarah took their own sips. They drank normally, without hesitation. Maybe the wine wasn't tampered with after all. "Linda," said Sarah, putting her glass on the table. "Michael and I have been talking. We worry about you living alone in this big house." "It's true," added Michael. "Especially considering these recent episodes. We thought maybe it would be better if you moved to a smaller place, easier to maintain. Or maybe we could come live here with you for a while." I felt Robert tense beside me. That was it. They wanted to move into our house, be closer to execute the plan. "How kind of you," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "But we are perfectly fine, right, Robert?" "Absolutely," he agreed. "Actually, we are even thinking of traveling soon, maybe a season on the coast, in Florida or Hawaii." I saw Michael and Sarah exchange a quick look. "Traveling? Now?" questioned Michael. "I don't think that's a good idea, Dad. What about Mom's doctors? And your routine exams?" "Everything excellent," I replied for Robert. "We can travel peacefully." Sarah smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "Do you need help planning this trip? I can look for hotels, packages." "Won't be necessary," I cut in. "We are already taking care of everything." Dinner proceeded with that underlying tension. In every apparently innocent question, I recognized the true intention behind it. They were evaluating our mental state, trying to establish control, looking for ways to get physically closer to us. When I served dessert a cheesecake I made with care in front of Robert, Michael resumed the subject. "I was talking to a lawyer," he said casually, "about broader power of attorney. You know how it is for emergencies?" "What kind of emergencies?" asked Robert, his voice controlled. "Well, if one of you needs to be hospitalized, or if, things get worse with Mom's memory." The lawyer suggested a full power of attorney that would give me authority to make medical and financial decisions for you. I looked at my son, studying his face. That same face I kissed as a baby, consoled as a child, photographed proudly at his graduation. How had it transformed into the mask of a calculating stranger? "That won't be necessary, son," I said finally. "We already updated all our documents recently. We even made some changes to our will and the insurance beneficiaries." Michael's expression froze for an instant. "Changes? What kind of changes?" "Nothing major. Just ensuring everything is in order in case something happens to us." Sarah put a hand on Michael's arm as if restraining him. "It's always good to review those documents," she said softly. "Did you consult a lawyer?" "Mr. Morrison, the one you recommended," lied Robert with impressive naturalness. "He was very helpful." There was no Mr. Morrison, but the lie hit its mark. Both seemed momentarily destabilized. At 10 p.m., Michael looked at his watch and announced they had to leave. "Work early tomorrow," he justified, but I knew the real reason. They needed to recalculate their plans. After many fake hugs and empty promises to visit more often, they finally left. As soon as the door closed, Robert and I slumped onto the sofa, physically exhausted by the effort of keeping up appearances. "They are suspicious," whispered Robert. "They realized something changed." I agreed, getting up to retrieve the recorder. We rewound the recording, listening again to the whole conversation. The implications were clear. Michael and Sarah were still determined to go ahead with the plan, but our recent moves, the medical appointment, the bank changes, the mention of the will had made them cautious. "They are going to try something soon," said Robert. "They can't wait much longer now that we started taking protective measures." "We need more concrete proof," I said. "The recording helps, but it's still not enough for the police. What if we tried to get them to confront them directly?" I shook my head. Too risky. They would deny everything and become more vigilant. That night, we checked every lock 3 times before going to bed. Even so, I slept with a phone next to the bed and a chair propped against the bedroom door. Precautions I never imagined needing to take against my own son. The next morning, I woke up startled by the sound of a car parking. I ran to the window and saw Sarah getting out of her black SUV alone at 8 a.m. on a workday when she should be at the office. "Robert," I called urgently, "Sarah is here." He got up quickly, still groggy. "Where is Michael?" "I don't know." "I'm going to open the door. But stay close." I went downstairs trying to control my breathing rhythm. Why would Sarah come so early without warning? What did she want? I opened the door even before she rang the bell. Her face registered surprise for a moment, quickly replaced by a rehearsed smile. "Linda, sorry to come so early. I was passing by on my way to work and thought I'd drop off these documents Michael set aside for you." She was holding a yellow folder. "What documents?" I asked, without trying to take it. "About that power of attorney we talked about yesterday and some articles on treatments for early Alzheimer's that can help delay the progress of the disease." She extended the folder again. "Michael is really worried about you." I looked at the folder for a long moment. It was a trap. It had to be. Maybe documents already prepared with my forged signature, like the life insurance we discovered. "Why don't you come in?" I invited, keeping my tone casual. "We can have a coffee and review it together." Sarah hesitated visibly. "Actually, I'm running late for work. I just wanted to drop this off for you to read calmly." "I insist," I said, opening the door wider. "Robert just made fresh coffee. It will only take 5 minutes." Reluctantly, she entered. I led her to the kitchen where Robert was already there, feigning tranquility while drinking his coffee. "Sarah, what a pleasant surprise," he said. "She brought some documents for us to sign," I explained, emphasizing the word sign. Robert understood immediately. "That's great," he replied. "Let's take a look." Sarah seemed increasingly uncomfortable as Robert took the folder and began examining the documents. I watched her closely, noticing how her eyes followed his every move, how her fingers tapped nervously on the table. "Interesting," murmured Robert after a few minutes. "This POA would give Michael total control over our finances and medical decisions. It would practically render us legally incompetent." "It's just a precaution," justified Sarah quickly. "Considering Linda's condition." "What condition would that be exactly?" I asked directly. "Well, the memory lapses, the confusion." She hesitated, apparently realizing she was on dangerous ground. Michael noticed several episodes. "Curious," I commented. "Dr. Evans didn't find any of that yesterday." "Doctors can be wrong," she replied, recovering her composure. "That's why the importance of a second opinion with a specialist." Robert put the documents back in the folder and pushed it toward Sarah. "We appreciate the concern, but we aren't going to sign this. In fact, we already initiated procedures to revoke the limited power of attorney we gave Michael last year." The shock on her face was genuine and momentary, quickly replaced by an expression of studied worry. "But why? Michael just wants to help." "We are sure he does," I replied, "but we prefer to maintain control of our own lives." Sarah stood up abruptly. "I have to go. I'm really running late." "Of course," I said, walking her to the door. "Tell Michael we will call later to talk about these documents." As soon as she left, Robert and I looked at each other. The same conclusion evident to both. "They are accelerating the plan," he whispered. "Yes," I nodded. "And that means we have to act now." After Sarah left, Robert and I carefully examined the documents she had brought. As we suspected, the power of attorney would give Michael absolute powers over our finances, properties, and medical decisions. There was also a voluntary admission form for a care facility in reality, an institution for seniors with severe dementia with spaces for our signatures. "They aren't even trying to hide it anymore," murmured Robert, his fingers trembling as he leafed through the papers. "They are practically asking us to sign our own death warrant." "That's good," I replied, surprising him. "The more explicit they are, the more proof we will have." I spent the morning photographing every document, creating digital copies that I sent to the email of Stella, my longtime friend and the only person outside our house I trusted completely. I briefly explained the situation to her and asked her to keep the files securely, without speaking to anyone about it. "What do we do now?" asked Robert when I finished. "We need a plan." Clearly, they are advancing. Sarah's surprise visit, these documents. We can't wait any longer. We decided it was time to seek professional help. Not the police, yet we still didn't have enough definitive proof, but a lawyer who could guide us on how to legally protect our assets and, more importantly, our lives. We chose an attorney we didn't know previously and who had no connection to Michael, Miss Rachel Brooks, a specialist in family and criminal law. We managed to schedule a consultation for that same afternoon. In her elegant office downtown, we explained the entire situation to Miss Brooks, the discovered messages, the bank accounts, the fraudulent life insurance, the manipulated medical records, the documents Sarah had brought that morning. The lawyer listened to us attentively, taking occasional notes and asking for specific details. When we finished, she took a deep breath before speaking. "Mr. and Mrs. Davis, we are facing an extremely serious situation. What you have described to me constitutes various crimes: conspiracy, forgery, attempted fraud, and most seriously, conspiracy to commit murder." "Do we have enough proof for the police?" asked Robert. "The messages are the most compelling evidence, but since you obtained them by accessing Sarah's phone without her authorization, there is a risk they could be considered inadmissible. However, considering the gravity of the situation and the imminent danger to you, I believe we can build a solid case." "What should we do first?" I asked. "Immediately, we are going to prepare legal documents revoking any existing power of attorney and blocking the possibility of new powers without the presence of an independent lawyer. I myself can serve as a witness to your mental capacity. Then we are going to file a detailed report presenting all the evidence we have so far." We spent the next 2 hours signing documents, formalizing statements, and planning every step. Miss Brooks was thorough, ensuring every legal aspect was covered. "Now," she said finally, "let's get to the most urgent matter: your physical safety. I strongly suggest you do not return home today." Robert and I exchanged alarmed looks. "Do you think we are in immediate danger?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Based on what you told me, yes. They realized you are taking protective measures. Sarah's surprise visit this morning suggests urgency on their part. If I were you, I would spend a few days in a hotel using a different name until we can obtain a protective order. We left the lawyer's office with a folder full of documents and a sense of urgency. We went directly to the police precinct, where we filed a detailed report. The detective on duty, a middle-aged man named Detective Miller, listened to our story with growing concern. "This is extremely serious," he commented after examining the evidence. "I'm going to assign an investigator to the case immediately and request discreet surveillance for your residence." When we mentioned that the lawyer had suggested not returning home, the detective agreed emphatically. "In fact, it would be safer for you to stay elsewhere for now. But before that, I would like to send a team to install discreet cameras in your house with your consent. Of course, if they try to enter or do something, we will have concrete proof." We agreed with the plan. We would return home briefly, just to pick up some essential belongings, while the police installed surveillance equipment in strategic points. Then we would go to a hotel downtown, far from our neighborhood, using fake names as suggested. During the ride back, Robert remained silent, staring out the taxi window. When we were almost there, he finally spoke. "I never imagined the day would come when I would be afraid of my own son." I squeezed his hand. There were no words that could alleviate that pain. Our house, seen from the outside, looked strangely normal. The same windows, the same garden we cultivated for years, the same mailbox Michael had painted as a teenager. It was hard to believe that this place representing safety and family had become the stage for a conspiracy against our lives. The plainclothes officers arrived discreetly in an unmarked car. They entered through the back door and worked quickly, installing tiny cameras in strategic places: living room, kitchen, hallways, entrances. They explained that the images would be transmitted directly to the precinct and monitored 24 hours a day. Meanwhile, Robert and I gathered the essentials: clothes for a few days, medications, important documents. I avoided looking at family photographs on the wall, objects that told the story of our life together. Every memory was now tainted by betrayal. "We are ready," announced the officer responsible for the installation. The cameras are practically invisible to the naked eye, but they capture everything in high definition. "If anyone enters, we will know." He handed us a small card with a phone number. "This is a direct line to our team. Any emergency, call immediately." When we were about to leave, my phone rang. It was Michael. I looked at the officer, who nodded, indicating I should answer normally. "Hello," I replied, trying to sound natural. "Mom, where are you guys? I stopped by your house and no one answered." My heart raced. He had gone to our house while we were out. "Why?" "We are shopping at the mall." I lied. "We needed a few things." "Oh, I understand. It's just that I got worried. You never leave without telling me." The falseness in his voice gave me nausea. It was a last-minute decision. "We are heading back home now." "Perfect, because I have a surprise for you. I'm waiting for you here." I froze. He was at our house right at that moment. "A surprise?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Yes, I brought that wine you like. I thought we could spend the afternoon together talking about those documents Sarah dropped off this morning." The officer signaled me to keep the conversation going. "How nice, son. We will be there in about half an hour." "Perfect. I'll wait for you." When I hung up, the officer was already communicating with his colleagues. "Suspect on the premises. I repeat, suspect on the premises. Keep distance, but be ready." Turning to us, he explained, "We are going to let him enter. Watch what he does. If he tries to plant something, drugs, poison, anything, we will have it on video. It would be irrefutable proof." The plan made sense, but the idea of Michael wandering through our house, possibly setting a trap, terrified me. "What if he discovers the cameras?" asked Robert. "Highly unlikely. They are the size of a button and placed in strategic spots. Besides, we have agents positioned discreetly on the block." We went to a nearby cafe where we waited anxiously for news. With every minute that passed, I imagined what Michael would be doing in our house, setting a trap, planting evidence against us, rummaging through our belongings looking for something. After 40 minutes that seemed like an eternity, the officer received a call. He listened attentively, nodding. He left, he informed us upon hanging up, and we have something interesting on the recordings. We returned quickly to the precinct where they took us to a room with several monitors. Detective Miller was already there watching the footage from the cameras installed in our house. "Mr. and Mrs. Davis," he greeted us gravely. "I think you should see this." On the screen, we saw Michael entering the kitchen with 2 plastic bags. He looked around, verified he was alone, and then began to act methodically. He took out several medicine bottles from the bags and put them in our medicine cabinet, mixing them with ours. Then he opened a bottle of wine, probably the surprise he mentioned, and added some kind of white powder, mixing it carefully before putting the cork back. Finally, he took a small electronic device out of his pocket that we didn't recognize and installed it discreetly under the kitchen table. Probably a microphone or camera. "My God," I murmured, hands covering my mouth. Seeing my own son on video deliberately preparing what looked like our death was an indescribable pain. "Now we have more than enough proof," said the detective. "I am going to issue arrest warrants for Michael Davis and Sarah Davis immediately." What did he put in our medicine cabinet?" asked Robert with a trembling voice. "We need to analyze it, but by the appearance, they are controlled substances, possibly in high doses. The substance he added to the wine will also be analyzed, but I would bet on some kind of potent sedative." Detective Miller put a hand on my shoulder. "Mrs. Davis, I know this is extremely painful, but I need you to understand. Your son was actively trying to kill you today. If you had gone home and drunk that wine..." I couldn't hold back the tears. The reality of the situation finally hit me with full force. It wasn't just text messages or suspicious documents. It was my son in our kitchen deliberately poisoning drinks and medications he knew we would use. "What happens now?" asked Robert, hugging me while I cried. "We are going to arrest them today," replied the detective. "With this evidence, there is no chance of bail. You are safe now, but I still recommend staying at the hotel for a few days until we resolve everything." As we were leaving the precinct trying to process everything that had happened, a police officer approached hurriedly. "Detective Miller, we just received a call. Michael and Sarah Davis are at the Davises' house right now. They seem agitated. They are looking for them." The detective reacted immediately. "Tactical team, ready. Let's go now." Turning to us, he explained, "They probably realized something is wrong, that you didn't return home as promised. We are going to arrest them right now." "Can we go with you?" I asked, surprising myself. A part of me wanted to run away. Never see Michael or Sarah again. But another part, perhaps the stronger one, needed to be there, to witness the end of this nightmare. The detective hesitated, but ended up agreeing. "You can stay in the police car at a safe distance, but you will not interfere in any way." On the way to our house, with my heart beating uncontrollably in my chest, I wondered how we had reached this point, how my son, whom I hugged in my arms as a baby, had transformed into this stranger capable of coldly planning my death. When we arrived, several police cars were already positioned discreetly around our house. Over the radio, we heard that Michael and Sarah were still inside, apparently arguing about what to do. "They realize something is wrong," commented an officer. "They are trying to call Mr. and Mrs. Davis's cell phones repeatedly. In fact, my phone had rung several times in the last few minutes. Always Michael." I ignored every call following police instructions. Detective Miller coordinated the operation personally, speaking in a low voice over the radio with the various agents positioned. "Teams in position," he announced finally. "We are going in 1 minute." It was then that we saw movement. The front door opened and Michael came out hurriedly, followed by Sarah. Both were carrying backpacks and seemed agitated, looking nervously around as they headed to the car parked in the driveway. "They are trying to run," murmured Robert. In an instant, several police officers emerged from their hiding places, surrounding the couple with weapons drawn. "Police! Freeze! Hands where we can see them!" I saw the shock on Michael's face, the panic in Sarah's eyes. For a moment, Michael seemed to consider running, but quickly realized he was surrounded. Slowly, both raised their hands. In a matter of seconds, they were immobilized, handcuffed, and put in separate vehicles. Everything was so fast and organized it seemed unreal, like a movie scene. Detective Miller approached our car. "It's done. Both are in custody, charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, and various other crimes. We found the tampered wine and the medications he planted. We are going to analyze everything." I looked out the police car window and saw my son being led, handcuffed, into the back seat of a patrol car. Our gazes crossed for a brief moment. I didn't see remorse in his eyes, only anger and perhaps surprise at being caught. In that moment, a strange sensation dominated me. It wasn't relief, it wasn't satisfied vengeance, it was just a deep emptiness, as if something fundamental had been ripped from me. We returned to the precinct where we gave more formal statements. The police had found incriminating items in Michael and Sarah's backpacks, the original bottles of the medications he had planted in our house, more doses of the powder he put in the wine, plane tickets to a non-extradition country dated for the next day, and a considerable amount of cash. They were ready to flee, explained the detective. They probably realized something was wrong, that you didn't return home as promised. The plan was clearly to leave the poisoned wine, hope you consumed it, and flee before the bodies were found. Robert held my hand tightly as we listened. Every new detail was like a knife through my heart. You can see him if you want, offered the detective after finalizing the paperwork. They are in separate holding cells waiting for transfer. Robert shook his head. He wasn't ready yet, and I respected that. But something inside me needed to look into my son's eyes one last time. I want to see Michael, I said, surprising everyone, even myself. The detective led me down a long, cold corridor to a small room with a table and 2 chairs. We will bring him here. We will be watching through the glass. And if you feel any discomfort, just raise your hand and we will interrupt immediately. I nodded, sitting with my back straight and hands crossed on the table to hide their trembling. A few minutes later, the door opened and Michael entered, handcuffed and escorted by an officer. His face was pale, eyes red, hair disheveled. He seemed to have aged 10 years in a few hours. The officer made him sit across from me and left, staying just outside the door. For almost a minute, we remained in silence, just looking at each other. Michael was the first to speak. "They set me up," he said, his voice low and bitter. "This is all a big misunderstanding." "Don't lie to me," I replied calmly. "No. Now it's over." Michael looked away, his jaw tight. "What do you want me to say?" "I want to know why. Why your own father and I? What did we do to deserve this?" Michael let out a humorless laugh. "You wouldn't understand. Try to explain it to me. I have all the time in the world now." He stared at me again, something cold and calculating in his eyes that I had never noticed before. "Money, Mom. It was always about money. You have so much: the house, the retirements, the investments, the insurance. And what do you do with all of it? Nothing. Living your mediocre little lives, saving every cent as if you were going to live forever." I felt the blow of his words but kept my composure. "And that justifies killing us?" "It was Sarah's idea at first," he admitted, as if that absolved him somehow. "She works in finance. She realized how much you were worth and was tired of waiting." "Why wait decades for an inheritance," she said, "when we can start our real life now?" "And you agreed just like that? So easily?" He shrugged. "It wasn't immediately. But she convinced me it would be better for everyone. You guys were already old. Eventually, you would start having health problems. You would suffer. It would be a favor." The coldness with which he spoke froze my blood. This wasn't the son I knew or thought I knew. "A favor," I repeated slowly. "Poisoning your own parents would be a favor?" "It wouldn't be painful," he replied, as if that mattered. "You would simply fall asleep and not wake up. Without suffering. Like the wine I prepared today." Michael fell silent for a moment. "How did you find out?" "It was the messages on Sarah's phone, wasn't it? That idiot technician." "Yes, it was the messages. But even without them, we would have realized eventually you weren't as smart as you thought, son." He shifted in his chair, handcuffs clinking. "And now? Are you going to testify against your own son? Send me to prison? You were going to make it look like an accident. No one would suffer. We would die peacefully, and I would finally have the life I deserve." "The life you deserve," I repeated, letting the words float in the air between us. I looked at him, really looked at him, trying to see beyond the anger, beyond the coldness, looking for any trace of the boy we raised. I found nothing. "I don't recognize you," I said finally, my voice almost a whisper. "The son we raised, whom we loved, whom we protected. Where is he?" "I'm here," replied Michael, a flicker of emotion crossing his face. "It's me. I just grew up. I just got tired of waiting for my turn." I stood up slowly. "You will have a good lawyer. We will pay for that. It is our last act as your parents. But don't expect anything else from us, Michael. What you did has no turning back." "Mom!" he called out when I was already at the door. "You don't understand. I just wanted a chance to live for real." I turned one last time. "We gave you every chance, son. Education, love, support. The choice of how to live was yours, and you chose this." I left the room feeling as if every step required enormous effort. In the corridor, I found Robert waiting with red eyes, his face marked by tears he didn't even try to hide. "What did he tell you?" he asked in a low voice. "The truth," I finally replied. "He did it all for money. Our death would be just a means for him to have the life he deserves." Robert closed his eyes, deep pain contorting his face. How did we not realize? How did we not see what he became? I had no answer. The same question tormented me. How parents who were present for every important moment, who celebrated every achievement, who taught values and principles, could raise someone capable of coldly planning the murder of his own parents. We left the precinct in silence, heading to the hotel where we would spend the next few nights. In the hotel room, we lay down exhausted, but sleep wouldn't come. When I finally dozed off, it was a fitful sleep filled with confused dreams. I woke up startled by the sound of the phone. It was Detective Miller. "Mrs. Davis, sorry to call so early. We need you to come to the precinct as soon as possible. There has been a development in the case." The grave tone in his voice alarmed me. "Did something happen?" "I prefer to explain in person. It's better if you come as soon as possible." I woke Robert and told him about the call. In 30 minutes we were at the precinct, being led directly to the detective's office. Miller received us with a grave expression. "Mr. and Mrs. Davis, thank you for coming so quickly. I have complicated news." "What happened?" asked Robert, his voice tense. "Sarah Davis requested to make a full statement in exchange for a reduced sentence. She is willing to testify against your son." I felt a lump in my throat. "What did she say?" "According to her, the original plan was just to steal from you, siphon money from accounts, obtain powers to control assets. The idea of physically eliminating you only came up in the last few months, when Michael realized you might discover the embezzlement." Robert squeezed my hand tightly. "She also claims," continued the detective, "that Michael was also planning to kill her after you were dead and he had access to all the money." The revelation fell like a bomb. "My son planned to kill his own wife," I whispered. "According to her, yes. She found messages from him with another woman, discussing how the money would be split after the Sarah problem was resolved." I closed my eyes, trying to absorb this new layer of horror. It wasn't enough to plan our death. Michael was willing to eliminate anyone who stood between him and the money. "There is more," said Miller, his tone even graver. "We analyzed the powder he put in the wine. It is a mixture of potent sedatives and a substance called oleander, extremely toxic, causes cardiac arrest, and we found evidence that he had already tried before." "What do you mean?" asked Robert. "Samples of your hair, Mrs. Davis, revealed traces of the same substance, probably administered in small doses to simulate natural health problems. That would explain the memory lapses he claimed you had." "They weren't lapses. They were symptoms of gradual poisoning." The room seemed to spin around me. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself as the cruel reality hit me. My son had already begun to poison me slowly, methodically. "For how long?" I managed to ask. "It's hard to be precise, but from what the samples indicate, at least 3 months. 3 months. I mentally reviewed the small signs I had ignored. More frequent headaches, moments of dizziness, sleepless nights. I attributed it all to stress, to age, never imagining I was being slowly poisoned by my own son. "And Mr. Davis?" asked the detective, turning to my husband. "I feel fine," he replied, confused. "Still, we recommend toxicological exams. If the missus was a target, it is possible he also started acting against you." We left the precinct even more shaken than before. The idea that Michael not only planned to kill us but had already started the process was unbearable. Every meal we shared in the last few months, every cup of coffee he gently prepared, every medication he reminded me to take, everything could have been part of his macabre plan. "Let's go to the hospital right now," insisted Robert. "We need to verify if there are permanent damages." At the hospital, we were treated with priority after explaining the situation. The doctors ran a battery of tests. The results confirmed the suspicions. I had detectable levels of oleander in my system, although not enough to cause permanent damage. Robert was clean, suggesting Michael had focused on me first, probably because as a woman with a history of health issues, my cancer, my death would seem less suspicious. "You were lucky, ma'am," explained the doctor. "The gradual poisoning was interrupted before it caused irreversible damage. With proper treatment and time, your body will eliminate the toxin completely." Lucky. It was a strange word to describe the situation. I was lucky because I discovered my son was poisoning me before he managed to kill me. In the following days, the case gained proportions we never imagined. The story of the son who planned to murder his parents for inheritance attracted national media attention. Reporters surrounded the hotel where we were staying. We refused all interviews. Our lawyer, Miss Brooks, became our official spokesperson. It was she who brought us the news that Michael would be charged with attempted first-degree murder, with aggravating factors of premeditated poisoning. If convicted, he faced decades in prison. A week after the arrest, we finally felt safe to return home. Entering that house again was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Every room held memories. In the living room, family photographs seemed to mock us. Michael as a child, Michael graduating. Moments that captured a life that we now knew had been, at least in part, an illusion. "We need to move," said Robert finally. "I can't live here knowing what happened in this kitchen." I agreed silently. That night, lying in our bed, holding hands in the dark, Robert voiced the thought that was tormenting me. Will we ever understand what happened? How our son turned into this? "I don't know," I replied honestly. "Maybe some things have no explanation. Maybe some people just choose the wrong path, regardless of how they were raised." We talked to him, Linda, so many times about honesty, hard work, family. How was it not enough? Maybe for some people, nothing is enough. Maybe the void inside them can never be filled. The following months passed in a blur of legal procedures and therapy sessions. We put the house up for sale and moved into a smaller condo downtown. It was simpler, but it didn't carry the weight of painful memories. Michael's trial was scheduled to begin in 3 months. The prosecution had a solid case. The conviction seemed certain. Still, the idea of testifying against my own son terrified me. One afternoon, while organizing some boxes in the new apartment, I found an old photo album. I sat on the floor and began to leaf through it slowly. There was a specific photo where Michael was about 5 years old, proudly holding a drawing he had done 3 stick figures representing our family with a smiling son above. "For the best mom in the world," it said in crooked, childish letters. The tears came uncontrollably. Where was that child now? Robert found me like that, crying over the open album. Without saying a word, he sat beside me and held me. We stayed there, both crying for the loss of the son we loved. Not for his physical death, but for the death of who we believed he was. The next week, we received an unexpected visit. Stella, my librarian friend who had helped me document the proofs against Michael, brought a folder with old newspaper clippings. "Linda, Robert," she began hesitantly, "I found something you need to see." The clippings were from a small newspaper in a town in Ohio, dated 5 years ago. The headline screamed, "Elderly man dies in mysterious circumstances. Niece inherits fortune." "What is this?" I asked, confused. "Look at the photo." Stella pointed to the image of a young woman being interviewed. It was Sarah, younger, but unmistakably her. Before she was Sarah Davis and moved to Denver, she was known as Caroline Smith, and the man who died mysteriously was her uncle who raised her. Robert took the clippings, reading quickly. She inherited everything. The police suspected poisoning but couldn't get conclusive evidence. "Exactly," confirmed Stella. "And do you know what the suspected substance was?" "Oleander." I felt a chill run down my spine. Stella nodded gravely. "The same poison found in your system, Linda. The same one Michael put in the wine." The implication was clear and devastating. Sarah wasn't just Michael's accomplice. She was likely the mastermind, the person who brought the idea, who taught the technique, who had done this before. "Why show us this now?" asked Robert. "Because her plea deal is almost finalized," explained Stella. "She is going to spend only a few years in prison in exchange for her testimony against Michael. It's not fair, is it? When she probably killed before." We took the discovery to Miss Brooks, who immediately contacted the district attorney. The investigations were reopened regarding Sarah's uncle's death. In a matter of weeks, Sarah's deal was suspended, and she faced additional charges. The police found a diary in her apartment detailing not only the plan to kill us, but also notes on the uncle's death and plans to eliminate Michael after getting access to our money. Sarah was a calculating sociopath who had deceived Michael, manipulating him to plan our death. She had used him as a tool. Michael, upon learning this during a preliminary hearing, collapsed. According to his lawyer, he finally realized the extent of the manipulation he had suffered, though this did not exempt him from his guilt for actively participating in the plan. It was at that moment we made a difficult decision. We would visit Michael in prison, not for forgiveness or reconciliation, it was too soon for that, but to look the truth in the face. When Michael walked into the visitation room, wearing an orange jumpsuit, my heart shrank. He had lost weight. He looked much older than his 35 years. When he saw us, tears immediately began to run down his face. "Mom, Dad," he whispered. "We came," replied Robert simply. "I'm so sorry," he said finally. "For everything. I know it means nothing after what I did. Why did you try to commit suicide?" I asked directly. He looked at his own bandaged hands. "Because I finally understood the magnitude of what I did. Not just the plan, but how much I hurt you. And I realized I could never fix it. For the first time since everything happened, I saw something in his eyes that seemed genuine. Not manipulation, not self-pity, but a real understanding of the pain he had caused." "You're right," said Robert, his voice gentle but firm. "Some things cannot be fixed. But that doesn't mean you should give up." "Why? What do I have left?" "Life," I replied simply. "Imperfect, difficult, inside these walls for many years, but still life. The chance to maybe one day do something good with it." We stayed only half an hour. We didn't promise to return regularly or offer easy forgiveness. We just said goodbye, leaving in the air the possibility, however faint, of some kind of future relationship. 4 years after discovering the conspiracy against our lives, Robert and I celebrated 45 years of marriage. We decided not to do anything grand, just a quiet dinner at home with the few friends who remained by our side during the storm. During dinner, watching Robert tell a story that made everyone laugh, I realized something important. We were happy again. Not in the same way as before. There were scars that would never disappear completely, but in a deeper, more conscious way. We had faced the worst life could offer and survived. Michael continued in prison, where he would spend many more years. He began studying law through a prisoner program with the idea of eventually helping other inmates. We visited him occasionally. Sarah was serving her sentence in a maximum security penitentiary, rejecting any contact with us. As for us, we learned to carry our story without letting it define us completely. Some nights I still wake up startled, remembering that moment in the tech shop when Jay turned the phone screen toward me and my world collapsed. But those shadows of the past appear less frequently now, overcome by the light of the present. On the night of our 45th anniversary, Robert and I sat on the balcony of our apartment contemplating the starry sky. "Who would have thought," he commented, holding my hand, "that after everything, we would be here together, survivors." I smiled, squeezing his hand. "More than that," Robert corrected. "Living." And he was right. We weren't just surviving. We were living fully, consciously grateful. We had learned the hard way that life is fragile, that betrayal can come from where least expected. But we also learned that human strength is extraordinary, that it is possible to start over. 5 years after that fateful afternoon in the repair shop, I look back and see not just the tragedy, but also the growth that came after. I didn't choose this path. I didn't ask for this pain. But I accepted the challenge to rebuild. And maybe that is the greatest victory. Not allowing hate or fear to define me. Choosing compassion and hope every day. Jay, without knowing it, gave me more than the chance to survive physically that afternoon. He gave me the chance to discover a strength I didn't know I had. Now, if you liked this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments which part left you with your mouth open. Oh, and don't forget to become a member to access exclusive videos I don't post here. I'll see you there.